Hi and welcome to the Firefighter 1 video series. My name is Adam Paul and I'm an operational officer here at Northwest Zone, and my tech is not working, so bear with me. There we go. So part of my role here is learning and development, hence the reason you get to hear my dulcet tones for a bit, so may I apologise in advance. The point of this series is to provide an easy to access way to absorb the theory content for Firefighter 1 for those who feel confident or comfortable accessing the theory course via the online training platform or don't have the appropriate tech to access it. If you do have a stable internet connection and a suitable device such as a computer or iPad, completing the theory course and assessment via the online training portal may be a good option for you. This presentation is aimed at giving you time to absorb the theory content at your pace when you have the time available, and is intended to allow to move straight to theory assessment during our face-to-face practical course. During that, there'll be a series of practical sessions and assessments. You may have been supplied already a copy of the manual and workbook, and if you haven't had them supplied already, we can provide a link to that on the video description. Before we go any further, if you need any assistance with reading or writing or similar, we're happy to assist. If this is the case, please feel free to stop the video now, give the office a call during business hours to discuss your needs and how we can assist you. If you're in the Northwest Zone, you can give us a call on 6822 7700. If you are in a different zone, you should have those details already at this point. So at this point during the course, it would normally go through housekeeping. However, as you're in your own environment, I just encourage you to get as comfortable as possible and make sure that you take breaks when needed. And of course, it's a video, so feel free to pause, go back, watch again, or whatever you need to do. So let's start with what is Firefighter 1. So Firefighter 1 is a foundation course for all members of the New South Wales Rural Fire Service who wish to contribute in an operational way. For most of you, that will be in the context of getting in a fire truck and fighting fires. Though for some of you, it may just be able to enter an active fireground to deliver food or assist with door knocking in a community liaison role. However, whatever your motivations for completing this course, the aim is to provide you with the skills to work under direct supervision on a fireground, utilise relevant equipment and be able to communicate effectively using the RFS equipment systems. By the end of this series, the following learning outcomes should have been met. You should understand digital tools and technology used by the RFS, firefighter safety, so how you can keep yourself and others safe, firefighter teamwork, what is a fire, bush firefighting techniques, hazard reduction, what does it mean and how do we achieve it, provided emergency care, dealing with potentially traumatic events. So session 2, we live in a world that is more and more full of technology, and as the technology evolves, it becomes more available and cost effective for agencies such as ours to utilise it. Irrespective of your views on technology, it's here to stay and has become a daily reality in many cases. The technology that we see in the context of the RFS can be really helpful, particularly in relation to real-time incident intel and mapping. This means quicker decisions based on more complete understanding of the incident. This results in better outcomes on the fireground. Firstly, all of you should have received your username and password when your membership approval letter came through. Most people's username will be their first name, last name, -VOL at rfs.nsw.gov.au. For some people, you may have a number in your username as well. If you're not sure of these details or you need some help resetting the passwords and finding your username, please give your district office a call. So this username and password is used across the RFS platforms, or the ones that you're likely to use anyway. So it's worth keeping these details saved somewhere convenient in your phone or written somewhere you can access quickly. So the following technology is the most common systems you're likely to access. So one RFS, RFS Active, the MDTs or mobile data terminals, Fire Mapper, and we also have a district jotform. So starting with One RFS, the One RFS platform is a main access point for info or access to software systems that you might need to use or access. One RFS will link you to the RFS Fuel websites, which is what you need to use as a training portal. It will give you access to brigade data such as contact details, your membership details, and it has links to other software and sites that we use that may be useful, depending on what your role is with RFS. That's probably not particularly relevant at this stage of your RFS membership, but if you move through and potentially take a leadership role, some of those systems can be really helpful. The next bit of technology we commonly use is called RFS Active. So RFS Active is an app you can download on your iPhone or Android, and you can also access it via a web app. RFS Active is the primary method in which we activate members to jobs. While we do send that message in via SMS, it can be delayed and does not show visibility as to who else can attend or can't attend. RFS Active also shows a map location of where the incident has been pinned by 000, as well as other contact info from brigade members. By using RFS Active and responding that you can or can't attend an incident is really helpful to the duty officer and OCC operators to have an idea quickly as to if the crew is likely and start considering activating additional brigades if required. So MDT, or mobile data terminals, it refers to an iPad-like device fitted to most of our operational vehicles. The MDT has the incident pushed out to it from our dispatch software, or CAD, and allows crews to accept the job, navigate to the job via the inbuilt navigation system, access command and control functions. You can input sitreps and intel as well as basic mapping, uploading photos. You can see incident mapping. At the end of the job, you can submit a brigade report called a BERS with what members attended and what functions they undertook and the times that you were there. This currently requires a data connection via the mobile network, but as a Starlink van or vehicle as a node program is implemented, you'll be able to access data via that van system. FireMapper. So FireMapper is a fairly new service-wide software program that can be downloaded as an app and accessed via your RFS login. Provided you have a data connection, you can access the incident map in real time, contributing to mapping updates and accessing other mapping updates from other users. We regularly use this to liaise between duty officer and infield crews to understand where the fire is, what has burnt, where it's going, what the threats are, develop strategies on the fly. Many longer serving members are less comfortable with this kind of tech. Older people often struggle to use mobile phones and newer technology. And so as newer and younger members become involved with the service, often you can become a conduit to assist the captain or group officer in the field with this kind of technology. Lastly, it's worth touching on our district jotform. If you're watching this from a different district, you may or may not have this resource. However, the Northwest have developed a jotform that is comprehensive, easy to navigate and use, and it's a one-stop shop for nearly any information that you are likely to need as a volunteer in the district. This includes links to downloads for the various apps, access to OPGs or operational guidelines, and SOPs, as well as training calendars and course nominations, PPE and C and equipment requests, defect and safety reports, and so forth. Firefighter safety. When you stop and think about it, firefighter safety should be session 1. Your safety and the safety of those around you is and always should be your first priority. The New South Wales RFS works on a simple hierarchy of priorities. In this order, you should protect life, protect property, protect environment, and restore normality. As we continue through this section, and for that matter, the firefighter course in general, it's worth keeping in your mind. In this session, we're going to discuss safety from an RFS and firefighter perspective, and some of the content and acronyms that are RFS specific, but at its core, it's about safety first attitudes in the environment you'll be operating in, which, as you can imagine, has the potential to be very dangerous especially if you are not keeping a safety first attitude. We'll be going through the 3 R's, the RFS Safety Hub, I'm Safer, PPC, Firefighting Risks and Hazards, Dynamic Risk Assessments, Situational Awareness, and Overrun Procedures. So starting with the 3 R's. The first R is responsibility. This means taking appropriate care for yourself and others around you. Everyone should do likewise, but it's important that you don't blindly assume that they have. No one will care more about you than you, and if you let yourself get hurt, you can't help others. Reporting is the next R, and this refers to the concept of freely sharing information with others. In other words, if you see something that is not right, speak up. Or if others see something that is causing them concern, listen. Humans can be far too willing to take risks for a perceived reward. Men tend to be far more likely to take risks, and oftentimes, people in more remote locations are more used to taking risks, and it's often the way they get things done. A person who's employed on a work site in Sydney or a large mining site full of safety advisors and safe work practices and doctrine is far more likely to be used to following what seems like clunky paperwork, whereas a farmer is more likely to be used to just making it happen, as no one else is there to help, and you can't afford to wait. Remember, you can replace a fire truck, you can't replace a life. The last R stands for risk assessment. It's nearly impossible to have lived to this point in history without having been exposed to risk assessments. But to quickly refresh your memory, risk assessments are about identifying potential hazards and considering the consequences of them. This allows you to take actions to control or even better, eliminate them. We can't always eliminate a hazard. After all, we are talking about hazards in the context of fighting fires. This in itself is inherently risky. However, we can put systems in place to minimise the potential for harm. So the RFS Safety Hub. The Safety Hub is the primary way that we report safety incidents and hazards in the RFS. So what is a safety incident? A safety incident is any event that has caused harm or has the potential to cause harm to any RFS member and or any non-members who operate under RFS jurisdiction or damage to property. So in terms of RFS jurisdiction, that would mean in the context, particularly out in farming areas, farm fire units, so people that turn up potentially in a tractor, a dozer or a grader, or even a trailer or towing a trailer with a pump and a water tank. So safety incidents, near misses and hazards should all be reported. Firstly, they should be reported as soon as possible through the chain of command. As a new firefighter, you should report to your crew leader or group officer on the fire ground. They would then report it to the duty officer and so forth. You are likely to be asked to fill out a safety report. However, if you are unable to access the system to fill it out yourself, someone certainly can assist you. That may be calling the office and we can run through it with you. Reporting incidents and near misses, even ones that are very minor, is important to allow us to identify and track incidents that are happening, are common, and on what level of injury has or may occur. Weak points can be identified, and systems developed to continue to improve member safety. You will not be in trouble for reporting incidents and near misses. We'd much sooner see you report early to ensure appropriate care is available. Any repairs are completed quickly, and we can identify further or ongoing risks to increase safety as a whole. Safe person. So what is a safe person? Being a safe person can be broken down into 4 aspects. The combination of these 4 parts is the basis for what makes you safe. They are fitness, procedures, training, and PPE and C. Starting with fitness. Fitness does not necessarily mean that you are a very physically fit person. I'm certainly not. Rather, it means that you have the required level of fitness for the tasks or task you'll be undertaking. If you are joining a remote area fire team crew that needs to be helicoptered into a remote location and walk out cutting a trail by hand, you're going to need a very high level of physical fitness. If you are joining a crew on a fire truck with the intention that you'll remain with the truck and operate the pump, your fitness level certainly doesn't need to be as high as that of the remote firefighters. Conversely, a member who wishes to contribute by learning the radios and working as a comms operator in the Fire Control Centre will need far less physical fitness than the first two. Before you attempt a task, you should be aware of what's required and be confident that you have the physical capacity to undertake it. Procedures. A wise man once told me that the safety laws and regulations are written in the blood of others. SOPs are written because other people have been hurt or killed undertaking certain activities, and procedures are there to guide us on how to safely undertake those activities. It's important to think as procedures and guidelines as a minimum standards. If you can complete the task at a higher standard, then it's good practice to do so. Training. We don't know how to do most things unless we're shown. While many people will bumble through and work it out, they're unlikely to do it in the correct or safe way, or learn the dangers by hurting themselves. Training teaches us how to do things the correct and safe way. Continual training commits the activity to muscle memory, meaning we don't have to think, we can just react, and that makes us safer again. PPC and PPE stands for Personal Protective Clothing and Equipment. The RFS supply protective clothing and equipment that meets Australian standards, and it's built into the procedures that we use to add an additional layer of protection to maintain your safety. Full PPE and PPC should be worn at all times on the fire ground, and it's not a suggestion, it is provided to help keep you safe. I'm Safer. So I'm Safer is a handy checklist to help you identify if you are fit to carry out firefighting activities. I stands for illness and injury. Am I sufficiently recovered from that illness or injury? M stands for medication. Am I under the effects of any medication? S stands for stress. Am I under severe stress from work or personal worries? A is for alcohol and drugs. Am I under the influence or am I hung over it all? F stands for fatigue. Am I tired or not adequately rested? E is for expertise. Am I currently competent to undertake the task? And R is for review. So have I recently reviewed my ongoing suitability for firefighting? And that means that we should continually go through the I'm Safer checklist as we're on the fire ground or each time we need to go out. So now we're going to speak about the priorities of operation. So we spoke about them briefly at the introduction. And these priorities are how we maintain firefighter safety. So they are the overriding priority, which is firefighter safety. The first priority, which is to protect people. The second priority, which is protecting property. The third priority, which is protecting the environment. And the fourth priority, which is helping to restore normality. That brings us to LACES. So LACES is another acronym that we use in the RFS, and the LACES checklist summarises safety actions on the fire ground. So L means for lookout, and that is everybody looks out for everybody else. A is for awareness. Everybody is aware of the fire's current and anticipated behaviour and of fire ground hazards and precautions. That means you should ask if you don't know. C is for communication. Everyone speaks up and everyone listens about what is happening and about what their concerns are at the fire. E is for escape routes. Everybody just has an out or planned and agreed way out just in case things go wrong. S is for safety refuge. And that helps everybody survive by having a safe place to go, clear of any hazards. So what PPC and PPE does the RFS supply? So in this slide, you'll see the basic PPE and C provided to all firefighters. If you've not been issued this equipment yet, or you have lost part of it, please don't enter an active fire ground and reach out to the Fire Control Centre for a new set. For those of you in the Northwest Zone, you can order new or replacement gear via the district jotform that you should save on your phone's homepage. And again, the link to that will be on the video description, or we can help you when you come to the practical session to download that. So the top left, you'll see the helmet. So while some of the older style helmets are still in use, the standard helmet supplied now is called the Packfire BR9. This is a high quality Kevlar composite helmet and is designed and built for use in wildfire firefighting operations. The helmet is designed to provide protection from falling objects, radiant heat and embers, and especially when worn correctly with the neck flap fitted and in the correct position. Next is goggles. There are two types of goggles supplied depending on your needs. Type 1 goggles are what most people are issued and wear. However, if you do wear glasses, you can be issued with a Type 2, which is an over glasses style of goggle. Gloves. So we supply a leather glove. It's in a number of sizes, from extra small up to a double extra large. So you should be able to find a glove that really suits your hand size. Painful hand injuries are very common, and the gloves should be carried at all times and worn when appropriate. Boots. So there's a few different styles of boots supplied. Some village brigades and districts supply the Oliver structural firefighting boot. However, the standard boot is a Magnum wildfire boot that can be retrofitted with a lace-on type zip if required. The boots are built to provide protection from conducted heat as well as ankle support. Next is a flash hood. The flash hood is supplied to provide an additional layer of protection should you end up in an overrun. You should only wear your flash hood if you are in imminent danger of an overrun, and we'll talk about this more during the practical sessions. You've also got your full uniform. You can see the gentleman to the right wearing. So in there you'll see he is wearing a pair of wildland trousers, a wildland jacket, both which are treated with a fire-resistant chemical called Proban. Underneath, he should be wearing a utility shirt, which is a cotton-based button-up sleeved shirt, which is also issued. The trousers and jacket help provide protection from radiant heat, but it's important to remember they are not fireproof. The jacket is bright yellow, and both the jacket and the trousers include retro-reflective tape markings. The combination of both the high-vis yellow and the retro-reflective strips provide high visibility both day and night. We also have a cold climate jacket if there's a genuine reason. So we also have respirators. There's a couple of options available. Primarily we have a full and half-faced variant, which is a Draeger respirator. And we'll go through those in a little bit more detail later on. But also we do supply a P2 dust mask type respirator. Hydration. The RFS supplies water bottles to all brigades, and fresh water will be always available for collection at the Fire Control Centre. Some members may choose to purchase and use alternative solutions such as double wall water bottles that attach to your belt with webbing, or even hydration packs. However you choose to keep hydrated, it's important to monitor your hydration levels and consider using electrolyte supplements to assist. We also have offensive structural PPE. Some brigades are also equipped with CABRE, which stands for compressed air breathing apparatus, and they're trained to fight structural fires offensively. This PPE is different to the bushfire PPE, as it needs to provide protection in a very different environment. If you are in a BA brigade, you may choose to go down the BA training pathway, and at this point you'll learn a lot more about the BA gear and the structural PPE. So moving on to the respiratory system. So the respiratory system is essentially when you inhale or breathe, air enters your lungs and oxygen in the air transfers across your blood. Waste gas in the form of carbon dioxide transfers back and is expelled out as you breathe. This is called gas exchange and is essential to life. Fire causes a number of respiratory hazards, which in a fire are normally in the form of smoke, dust, and fumes. If exposed to these substances or particulates, there can be adverse effects on your lungs and even cause respiratory illness. In addition, these substances can affect your nose, throat, and other parts of your body, such as your liver. As I mentioned a little earlier, the RFS supply options for respiratory protection. In the most basic form, we provide a P2 mask, But trucks are also supplied with the Draeger P3 respirators in full and half-face versions. These offer a greater protection. In some cases, your brigade may also have CABA, which when trained offers the highest level of respiratory protection. Where possible, you should limit your exposure to these hazards. You may be able to be upwind of the smoke and fumes or just further away from the hazard. There'll be a little series of videos that you'll watch now on how the Draeger respirators work.
Before donning the respirator, visually inspect the respirator body, exhalation valves and the straps for damage and cleanliness. Ensure that all of the straps are loosened. Next, attach the canisters to the respirator by aligning the fitting to the mark on the respirator and turning in the direction of the arrow. Connect the two neck straps together and pull over the back of your head. Whilst holding the respirator over your face and nose, place the head cradle on the crown of your head. Gently pull the two adjustment straps forward until the respirator fits comfortably on your face. Whenever the respirator is donned, a fit check needs to be performed. This may be either a negative leak test or a positive pressure test. To perform a negative leak test, hold your hands over both canisters, creating a seal. Breathe in till a negative pressure is generated and hold your breath for a few seconds. The negative pressure should be maintained within the respirator. If a leak is detected, adjust the respirator and retighten the straps before testing again. To perform a positive pressure test, seal the exhalation valve of the respirator with the palm of your hand. Whilst exhaling, ensure that the respirator inflates slightly. If air leaks out around the respirator, adjust how it sits on your face and retighten the straps before testing again. You should not enter any smoke prior to achieving a successful leak test. If at any point you can taste or smell smoke, remove yourself from the area and re-perform a leak test immediately. Once the respirator is donned, the adjustment straps can be tucked up out of the way and other PPE, such as your helmet, can be donned. Whilst the 3500 is donned, the neck straps can be unhooked to lift up the face piece and have a drink without having to remove your helmet. Once finished, rehook the neck straps and re-perform a leak test. To doff the respirator, unhook the neck straps to release the face piece. Next, loosen the two adjustment straps and remove the head cradle. Before stowing the respirator or having any other member use the respirator, it must be cleaned thoroughly and dried.
Before donning the respirator, visually inspect the respirator body, exhalation valves and the straps for damage and cleanliness. Ensure that all of the straps are loosened. Next, attach the canisters to the respirator by aligning the fitting to the mark on the respirator and turning in the direction of the arrow. Place the respirator onto your face and place the harness behind your head. Whilst holding the respirator in place with one hand, tighten each of the bottom straps. Next, tighten the middle and top straps. The straps should be tight enough to hold the respirator in place, but not too tight to cause pain or discomfort. Whenever the respirator is donned, a fit check needs to be performed. This may be either a negative leak test or a positive pressure test. To perform a negative leak test, hold your hands over both canisters, creating a seal. Breathe in until a negative pressure is generated and hold your breath for a few seconds. The negative pressure should be maintained within the respirator. If a leak is detected, adjust the respirator and retighten the straps before testing again. To perform a positive pressure test, seal the exhalation valve of the respirator with the palm of your hand. Whilst exhaling, ensure that the respirator inflates slightly. If air leaks out of the respirator, adjust how it sits on your face and retighten the straps before testing again. You should not enter any smoke prior to achieving a successful leak test. If at any point you can taste or smell smoke, remove yourself from the area and re-perform a leak test immediately. To doff the respirator, simply loosen the head straps starting from the bottom two straps and then remove from your face. Before stowing the respirator or having another member use the respirator, it must be cleaned thoroughly and dried.
Today we're talking about field cleaning of the Draeger Explore 35 and 5500 face masks. Each appliance kit is supplied with a 500 milliliter bottle of Asepti Active Disinfectant Cleaning Liquid or the Oxivia Cleaning Wipes. Cleaning can be performed with either the Oxivia wipes or the Asepti BA cleaning disinfectant fluid provided. However, only one product may be used at a time. If you're not confident that the respirator has been cleaned after its last use, it can be cleaned again using the field cleaning method prior to use. Field cleaning can be achieved with the cleaning materials provided and a bottle of drinking water. This process is covered in 3 steps. Step 1. Carry out an inspection. Remove both canisters if fitted to the face mask and dispose of in general waste. If you believe the respirator has been exposed to hazardous materials, the canisters should be double bagged and the procedure for detailing that specific hazardous material should be followed. Loosen off all the head straps on the masks, taking care to carry out an inspection, taking particular care to the condition of the strap itself and the roller buckles. Look for damage or deformity. On the 5500 face mask, the exhalation valve can be accessed by removing this front cover here. Take care not to dislodge the exhalation valve disc during the inspection. Next step is cleaning. Option 1, using the Oxivia wipes. Take a clean wipe from the container and wipe all accessible surfaces on the face mask, paying particular attention to the areas that come into contact with the wearer's face. Wipe all surfaces thoroughly until they are wetted. The surfaces must remain visibly wetted for the minimum contact time of at least 60 seconds to ensure proper disinfection. The disinfectant wipes are single use only. Once used, please dispose of accordingly in a waste disposal bin. The ready-for-use wipes have to be used in accordance with the manufacturer's specifications. Wiping may cause a slight lint to form on some surfaces. This lint can be removed using a slightly damp, lint-free cloth. Option 2 is using the Asepti Active Liquid Disinfectant provided in the kit. Wear gloves and additional PPE where required. You should apply the Asepti Active Liquid to all mask surfaces directly or via a dry lint-free wipe. Apply to surface areas in a wiping motion. If necessary, dry the mask with a lint-free cloth. The mask can now be considered ready for use. In this video, we are going to talk about recommissioning, cleaning and disinfection. This is a 4-step process. Step 1 is the inspection. For the mask in question, remove both canisters and dispose of in general waste. If you believe that the respirator has been exposed to hazardous materials, the canisters should be double bagged and the procedure for dealing with that specific hazardous material should be followed. Loosen off all straps on the mask and carry out a visual inspection, taking close attention to the condition of the straps and also the exhalation valves and the retention strap. In the case of the Explore 5500, the exhalation valve can be accessed by removing this front cover. Once the inspection has been carried out, please ensure to replace the front cover, taking care not to dislodge the exhalation valve during the inspection process. On the Explore 5500s, inspect the rubber on the head strap to make sure there is no delamination and the roller buckles do not appear to be bent. The initial cleaning process is designed to carry out cross-contamination. It is important that this pre-cleaning process is carried out to remove any visible soiling. Dirt, soot and saliva can be removed and is conducted prior to the disinfection step. Remove any accessories so that all parts can be cleaned individually. The initial cleaning can be achieved by preparing a bath of the cleaning solution. We use the Asepti BA mixture for this process at a ratio of 12.5 millilitres per litre of water. If this isn't available, please use the field cleaning method to remove all visible soiling. Once finished, rinse the respirator with clean water to remove any cleaning product or contaminants on the respirator. Immerse the face mask in the bath and agitate gently, and use a soft cloth to remove any visible soiling. Rub all accessible surfaces. Taking care not to dislodge any of the valves within the face mask. Once the mask is visibly clean, then rinse under fresh running water to remove the initial cleaning solution. Shake the mask to remove as much of the water as possible. Note, the respirator should be visibly clean, however, it is not yet disinfected. The next step in the process is disinfection. We now need to prepare a second bath of Asepti BA disinfectant with clean water. Again, 12.5 millilitres of disinfectant per litre of water is used. This is equivalent to 40 mils in the half-face respirator container or 90 mils in the full-face respirator container. Water should be at a minimum of 20 degrees or a maximum of 30 degrees. Place all parts of the mask that require disinfection in the bath for a duration of 10 minutes, ensuring that the mask is completely submerged to expose all surfaces to the disinfection solution. If the contact time is shorter than the 10 minutes, the mask may not be correctly disinfected. Do not allow them to soak for any longer than this, otherwise you risk causing permanent damage. Once the 10 minutes is up, remove the mask from the disinfection bath and rinse with clean running water. Taking care to remove the cleaning and disinfection solution as thoroughly as possible. Tip out any excess water. The next stage in the process is drying. Shake the excess water from the mask and leave it out to air dry. Otherwise, use a lint-free cloth to pat dry if necessary. If placing in a drying cabinet, set the maximum temperature at 60 degrees. Respirators must only be stowed once completely dry. If air drying, prevent exposure to direct sunlight.
Welcome back. Hopefully you're still awake after that super exciting series of videos on the Draeger respirators. And as we move on to risk assessment, if you're not already asleep, you're quite possibly going to be asleep after this. So, a documented risk assessment is completed in order to identify and evaluate risks. When a risk has been identified, 3 steps are undertaken. First, you need to determine the consequence of the risk. Second, you need to determine the likelihood of the risk. In other words, you need to consider the worst potential outcome should the risk eventuate, and then the likelihood of the risk occurring. A common fireground hazard would be uneven ground, causing a firefighter to roll their ankle. The consequence would be potentially moderate, as they could break their ankle, and in the worst case scenario, likelihood is certainly possible. At this point, using the matrix that you see in the slide, we would determine the risk rating. So if we look at the matrix, you can see a moderate consequence with a possible likelihood gives us a medium risk rating. Ideally, we would like to drop the risk rating to low, so we need to consider how we would achieve that. We can't remove the uneven ground as it forms part of the environment. The fire is where it is, so we're stuck with that environment. We can't take the firefighter away from that. What we can do is note the uneven ground in an incident action plan. The incident controller or crew leader can brief crews on the uneven ground, remind firefighters to be careful, and ensure that all firefighters are wearing the proper firefighting boots to provide appropriate support to minimise both the likelihood of rolling the ankle and the consequence. With those admin and PPE treatments in place, we can assume that the consequence is now minor, as the PPE will limit the potential severity of an injury, and by bringing attention to the hazard, the remaining crews will be more careful, and we can assume that that likelihood is reduced to say unlikely. Our risk matrix now shows a low risk rating. That was certainly a mouthful, wasn't it? Now, we could also look at maybe felling a dangerous tree on the fireground. That may well be an extreme consequence, as death is possible and the likelihood is possible. This translates to a critical risk rating. In this case, our treatments would be ensuring that the crews felling a dangerous tree be trained to the appropriate level. This would be Tree Feller Fireline, or TFF. That suitably qualified person would then assess, using their training and experience, to determine if it is safe for them to fell the tree in that environment. An exclusion zone would be created, spotters used who are trained, and the appropriate PPE and C would be used. The consequence may still be major, but the likelihood would be potentially highly unlikely, and would then drop the risk rating to an acceptable level. Dynamic risk assessments. So a dynamic risk assessment is a process of continual risk assessments in the field. This process is not a static or formal assessment using the risk matrix, but rather encompasses an understanding of risk likelihood and consequences, and how to put systems in place on the fly to mitigate those risks. Dynamic risk assessments are dynamic and cyclical, and uses a process on the slide. Simply put, as situation and tasks arise, you'll need to evaluate the situation and task and the persons at risk. Select appropriate systems of work that maintain safety and continue to evaluate. If you are down a fire trail and fire activity increases and it's no longer safe for crews to fight it, the task is no longer safe and crews should withdraw to a safe location. If fire behaviour decreases and is stable, it may now be safe to start attacking the fire offensively again. Situational awareness. As a firefighter, situational awareness is a big part of how you keep you and your fellow crew members safe. The primary things that you need to stay aware of are as shown on the slide. What hazards to look out for in a situation? This may be dangerous trees or narrow tracks with no turning areas available. What is going on around you right now? Is fire behaviour increasing? Is a storm forming? Or is it getting hotter? What could happen next? If you can feel it getting hotter and drier, the winds are increasing, and what the fire is going to do now and where is it going to head. What sources of water are available? Is there dams available? Can they be accessed? Are they dry? Is there a water tank? And if so, how can we hook into it? Possible escape routes if conditions change. Always have an escape route planned. You should never enter an area that you don't know if you can escape from. This may be a tight driveway or track, and maybe the best solution is to reverse in instead. The firefighting hazards. Firefighting is inherently risky. For this reason, we need to be extra aware of the hazards around us so that we can react and keep ourselves safe if those hazards are present. This slide lists a lot of common hazards, but there are plenty more. We often operate around roads and traffic becomes a big issue. Not only is visibility often decreased due to smoke, but humans love to sticky beak and become very distracted. Fire happens more during hotter days, and we are then on the fire ground, kitted up in long sleeves, thick clothing, smoke and heat from the fire, chemicals, fatigue, bites and stings, poor communication, poor decision making, and teamwork are all potential hazards, just to name a few. Firefighter risks. The main cause of fatalities in the RFS are underlying conditions, for example, heart disease. Heart attacks are a big killer, especially when we have people operating in conditions that are much more stressful and require more physical exertion than they're used to in their day-to-day lives. Falling trees. Trees become very unstable when affected by fire. Gums are already a problem due to being a self-pruning tree. Add fire and wind and it becomes a recipe for disaster. Fire overruns. We'll look at the dead man zone shortly and explain how to read fire behaviour to minimise the chance of overruns. Vehicle accidents. We have drivers operating vehicles that are often much larger than they drive on a day-to-day basis in conditions where they may be stressed, have low visibility, may be steep and unstable, or driving under response conditions, or in other words, under lights and sirens, to get to an incident and make poor decisions due to adrenaline. So we move on now to the dead man zone. So the dead man zone describes any area within about 5 minutes of possible overrun from fire. If you are operating in this area, you need to be able to see or be warned immediately about any change in fire behaviour. Have a refuge available close by and go to it straight away if your safety is threatened.
The dead man zone is a hazardous place. It's the area directly around a bushfire where it's likely to burn in 5 minutes if the wind stays the same or if it changes its direction or strength. This can turn any part of the fire into a deadly head fire. Firefighters spend a lot of their time close to or in the dead man zone, so they must be aware of its dangers and ready to respond.
The head fire is the fastest moving part of the fire. The temperatures can be over 1,000 degrees. The flames might be over 40 metres high. Even after the flames have gone, you cannot survive in the head fire zone for maybe an hour. It's an enormously dangerous place. Really, it's like walking into hell.
Firefighters working on the fire line should expect that a wind change could occur at any time. In a matter of minutes, it will not only change the direction of a fire, but also its behaviour.
When the fire moves away from a line, it moves at its maximum rate of spread instantaneously. It goes from a few metres a minute to literally hundreds of metres per minute. The initial spread can be deceiving because the flames are flattened by the wind and driven across the surface of the litter. But without warning, they stand up and jump into the tree crowns. When a wind change occurs, you have to drop what you're doing and go immediately to a safe area.
In January 2015, a Bushfire Brigade light tanker was involved in a burnover within the Bindoon Army training area. Along with other units, the vehicle was providing protection for a front-end loader tasked with creating a fire break. When the others stopped to deal with a hopover, the light unit and front-end loader became separated from the group and moved into an area of heavy fuel and significant fire activity. They realised it was potentially dangerous for the light unit and radioed for extra support. Several minutes later, the wind changed and the vehicles were burnt over. The front-end loader was undamaged, but the light unit was scorched and the passenger received minor burns to his face. It's always best to be as close as you can to the fire, taking the active fire edge with you and keeping 1 foot in the black so you've always got the burnt ground to retreat to.
So guys, with everything that's coming up the hill, we need to all go into the black where Bosch is.
If parallel attack is needed due to heat, terrain, vegetation or other factors, firefighters should start from a safe point, the anchor point, and work systematically along the flanks of the fire to progressively contain the edge.
You have to watch the fire all the time. If there is any change, and the most usual change is the smoke starts coming towards you, then that's an indication that the conditions have changed. Get out of there. If you don't react immediately, you will be in big trouble.
On the night of January 6, 2016, as firefighters battled a significant multi-agency bushfire in the Shire of Waroona, crews in an urban pumper were tasked with protecting lives and property on the western flank near Lake Clifton. The fire was burning in a westerly direction towards Preston Beach. Acting on reports that residents were very concerned about an elderly lady who was unable to evacuate, the crews observed predictable fire behaviour 150 metres to the north, so they designated an escape route and parked near the entrance to gain access to the property. A short time later, the fire behaviour changed dramatically. The wind had shifted and its speed had increased fourfold. They needed to evacuate immediately, but the vehicle lost power amid severe ember attack and it was engulfed by fire. With the appliance burning around them and the main fire front having passed, the crew determined they needed to leave the cab for safety on burnt ground. Both firefighters sustained burns and the appliance was completely destroyed.
So we were stood in a paddock probably 150 metres away from the appliance with our backs to the wind, and it was like being in hell. The spotting and the wind intensity that was raining down on us, we couldn't turn around and face it. We were literally huddled over as the ember attack came through. And I remember at the time wondering where this was coming from, because as far as the eye could see where we were stood was low grazed stubble. But subsequently we found out obviously it had come out of that heavily forested area to the east. A lot of incidents come back to comms, and that's certainly been an area that significant improvements have been made in recent years in light of the number of large fires we've had recently.
Sector Commander Alpha, this is DIVCOM North. Receiving DIVCOM North.
So communications was something that probably wasn't great that night, and certainly could have got resources to us a lot quicker, and perhaps assisted us at the time of the burnover. Intel, good maps, good intel, where you're going, what you're going into, what the fire loading is around you, weather forecasts in relation to what to expect. That wouldn't have probably helped in that particular circumstance because it did change so markedly. But I guess it's spending that little bit of extra time to get armed with the knowledge and the data you need to make effective decisions once you get where you're going. What worked well, or what worked to our advantage that night, was we dressed appropriately for the tasking. So we were tasked with asset protection, which is a full level 2 suite of PPE, which isn't comfortable at the best of times, let alone in an environment like that. But we'd followed that, and that certainly saved us, possibly saved our lives, but certainly saved us from severe burns. I think the ability through our training and experience to remain calm under pressure, huddled in the footwell of a Scania trying to get emergency radio comms out and think at the same time, and have faith in the people with you was paramount. And yeah, that 90-second window where I really wondered if we were coming out of this alive, but just still to follow your procedures, follow what you think is going to work best, and have a plan probably worked in our favour, definitely.
Fire behaviour is affected by weather conditions such as wind speed and direction, as well as fuel and topography. It's vital for firefighters to know about the vegetation they're working in. Fuel varies in its type, size, quantity, arrangement and moisture content, and all of these have a role to play in fire behaviour. Topography can significantly increase or decrease a fire's rate of spread. Fires move more rapidly uphill, but will slow when travelling downhill. For every 10 degrees upslope, the rate of spread will double. In October 2012, the Black Cat Creek fire started on private property near Albany and burnt through Two People's Bay Nature Reserve. It was an early season bushfire that was initially thought to be uneventful. The air was dry, creating a low dew point that made the finer fuels more ready to burn. Burning under the influence of a northwesterly wind for most of the day, the fire burnt down to the coast as crews worked undertaking indirect attack away from the fire edge. But a southwesterly wind change drove the fire towards the northern flank where crews were working. Straight away, the flank fire turned into a head fire. Tragically, the fire claimed the life of Parks and Wildlife firefighter Wendy Barefoot and injured several others.
In my experience, in this experience at Black Cat Creek, when the situation was deteriorating, we had no time at all. It was on us instantly, and we were looking for our fire blankets, we were looking for escape routes, but it was too late. Those things need to be there before the situation deteriorates.
If things start to deteriorate quickly, the sort of things I'd be focusing on is communication. So to make sure that everybody is aware of potentially what's going on, and then to look at safety aspects to make sure people are in safe positions or can try and get into safe positions, that they've got PPE, that structures are being adhered to, and like with the burn over training we have now, to go through those steps to ensure that you're not missing things.
Time has healed a lot of things, but I think the lessons are that you can never go to a fire complacent, thinking that it's an easy one. It was October, it was the beginning of the season for us, first wildfire, and yeah, we weren't expecting anything strange.
It's a difficult thing to just say, this is what happened and I reckon you should do this if you're in the same situation, because every situation is going to be different.
I guess there's potentially a key common factor in a burnover situation is that there's a good chance that it's going to be unexpected.
We can learn from all bushfires, regardless of the magnitude of the incident, from an apparently small event to one that results in significant harm. These lessons learned from experience, together with formal training and having the right PPE, are vital for preparing for the bushfire season.
Yeah, look, I think it's sometimes it's an easy throwaway line, don't go in the dead man zone, but at some point every firefighter will find themselves in what is the dead man zone, which is on the flank of a fire, and all that makes it a dead man zone, dangerous or not, is the wind. I think the message, if anything, is make sure you do follow LACES, which we had. We had a way out. We were comfortable that we would have been sitting on Forest Highway watching all this unfold if our appliance had been able to move. So LACES is a good message, it's a key message. Due to other circumstances, it didn't work for us that night, but people are going to find themselves in the dead man zone, and it's just having that awareness of making sure you've got your escape route, you've got your intel on the fire weather behaviour, the fire loading around you, and just staying alert to the changing conditions at all times. Yeah.
I'd like to share what we went through, simply because, you think that you're going to go to work and you're going to come home safely, but sometimes you don't. It's important to be there 100% when you're at your job. You have to be at the briefing, you have to be there in your right clothes, you have to be there in the right state of mind, and you've got to be there for your colleagues. And you can't do this half-heartedly. It's not the safe thing to do.
So now that you've watched the Dead Man Zone video, let's go through the emergency procedure for a fire overrun. If you are in or near a truck when an overrun is imminent or is occurring, the following procedure should be followed. We'll practice the overrun procedure during the practical sessions, and you'll need to demonstrate that you can follow the procedure to a suitable standard as part of your practical assessment. So, getting in the truck. First, there'll be 3 blasts of the horn or siren, which signals for you to return to the vehicle. You should then return to the vehicle. The pump operator should turn off all open valves in the pump supply manifold and live reels, ensuring cab spray valve is left on if accessible. The crew should enter the cab of the truck, and the OIC ensures that all members are accounted for. You should then activate the overhead spray bars and wheel sprays, if fitted, using the red toggles. In some vehicles, the bull bar sprays, usually black toggles, are in the same location. So be careful not to activate these also, as there'll be a waste of very precious water. So once you're in the truck, you should have the OIC radio firecom per the overrun procedure. This will be discussed at length during the practical sessions. If the OIC is not available, it may be you that has to undertake this radio call. The crew should all don PPC, including the flash hood. Helmet should be removed but held in front of your face to shield heat. If fitted, the radiant heat curtains should be pulled down. Fire blankets, where available, should cover each person. The RFS supplies enough fire blankets in each vehicle for each person that the vehicle is registered for. You should lay down as low as possible. If possible, that should be below the windows, as glass transmits a lot of radiant heat. After the fire has passed, you should communicate to Firecom, disembark the vehicle, taking the fire blanket with you. Do not exit the vehicle with the fire blanket wrapped around you, as it may cause you to trip. Use a fire extinguisher to put out any fires on the vehicle. So this video we're about to watch will demonstrate how a fire overrun procedure should be undertaken.
All our trucks are equipped with safety features to protect our firefighters in the event of an overrun situation where the bushfire is potentially posing a risk to our members. Today we've got a situation where our firefighters are down in the bush doing some bush firefighting operations. We're going to hit the siren 3 times and we'll signify an emergency. All the crew will return back to the truck and activate our overrun procedures. The first stage is our firefighters will hear the blast of sirens and immediately drop what they're doing and return straight to the rescue fire truck. The crews will take shelter in the truck as the fire runs towards their position. Third stage, the firefighters will deploy heat-resistant curtains to protect them from radiant heat. As you can see, the firefighters are calling in an emergency call to our fire control centre to let them know what's going on and to get help on the way. The fourth stage is the crews will deploy our cabin and wheel sprays to protect the truck and the crew from oncoming fire. All our crews are trained to maintain at least a quarter of a tank of water for these type of emergencies. You'll also see firefighters who've covered themselves in blankets and have got down as low as possible to protect themselves from radiant heat. Cover yourselves up.
So moving now to session 4, firefighting teamwork. So in this session we'll work through the chain of command, what a typical RFS operation looks like, the principles of teamwork, traumatic events and operational guidelines known as OPGs. So the chain of command. The RFS is a ranked service. This means there is normally a clear chain of command you can follow. This may not always be the case. So if you have unranked members, the chain of command is based on the highest qualification held. If you've just completed Firefighter 1 and Firefighter 2, and someone else is a village firefighter, they will be higher in the chain of command. But if someone holds crew leader, they will be higher in the chain of command than the member with village firefighter. In the field, the ranks for volunteers are as per the slide. So you'll see as follows from top down: Group Captain, Deputy Group Captain, Captain, Senior Deputy Captain, and Deputy Captain. You can see from the helmet what colour helmet and what stripes are attached to each of those ranks. And there is also a set of insignias which will be on the epaulettes. So as you can see here, and you can see them on the RFS pocketbook if you need assistance there, which will be available for download either via the jotform or we'll have a link to that in the video description. So what is a typical operation? As you can imagine, it's difficult to describe a typical operation, and every brigade tends to do things just a little bit differently, and often responds to different incidents in different environments. Even a neighbouring brigade may be operating in a very different environment than you do. In the following set of slides, we'll work through the basic process of how we respond and proceed through an incident. Starting with the call out. So when a call comes in from 000, or sometimes via a phone call direct to the Fire Control Centre, we call this a local exchange call, the Operational Control Centre, or OCC, or in the case of our own ops room being stood up, will process the call through our computer-aided dispatch system called CAD. This will push out a page to the appropriate brigades and appliances, and that will generate a page to your RFS active app and or an SMS message with the details of the call. When that comes in, you should then consider the I'm Safer checklist, and if you are safe and available, you should press the green thumbs up. If you're not, press the red thumbs down. This populates on the active app and it shows the OCC and duty officer if there are sufficient crews attending, or if we need to make a phone call or maybe activate different or additional brigades. So you've thumbs up on active, you've headed to the station, and you are now at your fire station or fire truck. So first thing you'll normally do is look at starting the trucks up. That allows the air to build up so the truck is ready to drive. You're probably going to look at donning your PPE and C, and you might start considering your initial radio call, stating that you're crewing up and departing shortly. This is an opportunity to also confirm if any additional details have come in about the incident since the initial call. Once you're en route, you probably want to get the mobile data terminal powered up and logged in. This helps with navigation and situational awareness. The crew leader may discuss situational awareness and start a briefing. This should be in the form of a SMEAX format, and we'll go through SMEAX and what it means a little bit further in on the presentation. We'll also run through the basic functions of MDTs and then further in the practical sessions when we get to that. As we're approaching the scene, the crew leader should be giving you some basic instructions. Depending on the incident, you may be asked to attack the fire immediately, but you may also need to get into a position to defend, provide fire suppression at a road crash type of incident, or even provide first aid or some traffic control functions. On arrival, during an incident, tasks and priorities may change, but always remember safety is the overriding priority. Then, basic firefighting priorities follow. Obviously, this will depend on the type and severity of the incidents. While at this stage of your RFS career, you are likely to be a crew member and not taking the lead at incidents. It's important that you are, however, an extra set of eyes for your crew leader and provide feedback on any dangers or issues that you see arise that may need attention. After the incident, you'll need to restow and restock equipment, refill with water, and ensure the truck is ready to respond again if needed. It's also important to debrief after an incident. This allows you to consider lessons learned, discuss any concerns and processes, what you have had to deal with over incident. If the incident was traumatic, this may be a good time to consider if critical incident supports may be needed for you or other members of the crew. Principles of teamwork. Teamwork doesn't just happen. You need to actively participate, share, and support each other. Active participation includes taking part in activities. This is often operational, but may also include training or maintenance. You should try to participate in meetings or other brigade gatherings where possible. This is often a rarity in rural brigades, so it makes it even more important to participate in those meetings as they occur. This is often once a year AGM. Active participation also means asking for help or freely giving help, particularly as you become more skilled. Sharing information is about asking questions, speaking up if you're concerned or don't believe you have the ability, listening effectively and taking on the task effectively, sharing information and reporting hazards or changes, and participating in debriefs. Team support is exactly what it sounds like, offering to help where it's needed, being aware of other people's limitations, and accepting feedback from others and help when it's offered. Crew Resource Management, or CRM, is a set of techniques used to manage human error during incidents. CRM was developed in aviation and military and has been adapted for use in emergency services where split-second decisions need to be made where there is a potential for life or death consequences. Major accidents are often the result of a chain of small preventable errors. Some of you may have heard of the Swiss cheese concept, the idea being that the holes in the cheese are all errors or lapses. Imagine you're trying to push a stick through all the holes, but in most cases you go through one hole and just hit cheese on the other side. Maybe you might get through 2 holes before you hit the cheese. But if you manage to line up it just right, you can get the stick through all the holes and out the other side. In other words, we might have a couple of errors or lapses, and it'll be okay. But if we have lots of errors and lapses, at some point all those holes will line up and we'll have a major incident with potentially really serious consequences. When we talk about CRM, we look at errors and violations. A lapse is forgetting to carry out an intended action. A slip is doing something the wrong way due to distractions, and a mistake is making a poor decision due to lack of knowledge. So how do serious accidents happen? Investigations into major firefighter accidents show a pattern of these 6 major factors. They are low alertness, i.e. the situation doesn't seem hazardous, unexpected changes, so things that are different from the plan. Pressure to perform, it may be peer pressure, perceived peer pressure, or that you're just trying to save your own community. Narrow focus, often due to stress or frustrations. Rapid escalation of conditions above crew experience. Missed clues, this might be information that was available but not recognised at the time. We know these common patterns, but how do we avoid them? We start with personal fitness. Being physically and mentally fit helps. It also helps to get good sleep. Don't go out when you're not well, avoid drugs and alcohol, and manage your general well-being. Be prepared. Read and understand SOPs and OPGs. Train and be aware of any local pre-incident plans. Briefings and planning, particularly on large and protracted incidents. While it's hard to plan an initial response, as an incident drags on, good planning and effective briefings are important. So, Incident Command System, ICS. So ICS is a principle put together by AIMS, which is the Australian Inter-Service Incident Management System. And it sets out a consistent framework of how any agency dealing with any incident can set up an ICS, or Incident Command System, based on the incident level or scale. Depending on the level of incident, 1 through 3, a different size incident management structure will be formed. Minor incidents, like a level 1, will be managed by an incident controller in the field, with crews reporting to him or her. The rule of thumb is for people under your direct control, known as span of control. That is 1 to 5, but should be no more than 8 people under your direct control. For this reason, once an incident escalates to the point where there is more than 5 appliances on scene, it would normally move to a level 2 fire or incident, with control transferring to the local fire control centre with staff, normally the FCO or DFCO, taking control of the incident. As the response requirements change, at this point, there'll be a need for things like forward planning, operation support, logistics requirements such as catering, heavy plant and aircraft often being required. An incident management team, or IMT, will be formed with people filling all those roles to support ground operations. A level 3 fire is normally characterised by further degrees of both complexity and consequences, and normally requires the establishment of significant resources and structure for effective management of the situation. Incident ground organisations should consider the span of control we have just discussed. 5 really is the ideal number, but not more than 8 should be avoided. In the context of the incident ground, the first arriving crew leader is expected to take control of the incident. For some crew leaders, they may prefer to hand control to someone else who is more experienced or confident as soon as possible. For others, they may want to maintain control of an incident up to the point that it escalates to a level 2. The IC of a small incident of 1 or 2 crews may not need to do much more than direct the other crew where they want and what their task is, and maintain consistent sit reps to FIRECOM. If an incident escalates, they may want to hand control of the truck over to another crew member and maintain a bit more of a hands-off approach in directing crews from the truck. If the incident continues to escalate, they may consider staying to identify potential sectors and divisions and may be ready to hand over control of the fire to the Fire Control Centre and take on a sector or divisional control role. Again, the purpose is to break down the incident into manageable parts where each person has the appropriate span of control, i.e., each truck crew leader has a control of up to 5 crews. Each sector has a control of 5 to 8 appliances. Each division has control of 5 to 8 sectors, and everything just continues to scale while the span of control can be maintained. Session 5, what is fire? In this session we're going to look at what fire is. Fire triangle, the fire triangle, classes of fire, heat transfer, firefighting agents, parts of the bushfire, bushfire behaviour factors, and indicators of bushfire behaviour. The fire triangle, also sometimes called the fire tetrahedron. Fire is a chemical reaction called pyrolysis. It requires 3 elements to sustain it: heat, fuel, oxygen. The 3 sides of the fire triangle, or the combination of all 3, results in the chemical chain reaction that we know of as pyrolysis. If you remove any of these elements, you'll extinguish the fire. Understanding the fire triangle and the concept of removing one element helps us understand how we can effectively control a fire. One way to control a fire is by smothering it. We might be able to shovel soil onto a fire, put a fire blanket over a burning pot of oil, or use foam to cover flammable liquids. Smothering the fire removes oxygen from the fire and can be an effective way to control a fire. But it does not always remove the heat, meaning it can often reignite, especially with a bit of breeze. A bit like starting a fire with a spark and some tinder. Cooling a fire is probably the method in which we are most used to controlling a fire. Using water on a fire removes heat from the fire itself and also cools the fuel that's burning. Most organic matter that burns requires constant heat to convert it to a gas that then burns. Cooling the fuel stops the process and makes it harder to reignite. We can also use small percentages of foam, which we call BFFF, to break down the surface tension of the water and ensure that the water can reach smaller crevices and cracks in the burning material, cooling it further. The last method is starving the fire or removing the fuel. This may be as simple as turning the tap or valve off to stop a fuel supply, in the case of, say, a gas line. In other cases, it may be a control line built by hand or machinery. Crop and grass fires will often be controlled by large offset ploughs in areas like we have here in the northwest. Backburning also removes or reduces available fuel, often used alongside the construction of containment lines to provide a mineral earth line to burn off. Classes of fire. There are 6 classes of fire, and each of those different classes of fire have different methods that are either safe or effective in controlling it. Class A, common solid materials such as wood, grass, paper, plastic and rubber. These are best extinguished with water. Class B, flammable liquids such as petrol, kerosene, thinners, diesel fuel and oil. Best extinguished by smothering. Flammable gases such as LPG, natural gas and acetylene are a Class C, and these are extinguished by starving off supply. Class D, combustible metals such as magnesium can be extinguished using dry sand or earth. Class E is any fire that involves electricity. These are best controlled by smothering. And Class F, preheated fats and oils such as a deep fat fryer. Water and even foam can be dangerous to use on a Class F fire. If you are putting a fire out with an extinguisher, it's important to check the fire extinguisher and ensure it's appropriate for the class of fire you'll be intending to fight with it. A Class A fire will normally use a water extinguisher. An AFFF foam extinguisher, or blue band fire extinguisher can also be effective where there is a dry chem white band or CO2 black band. A Class A fire will normally use a water extinguisher, which is normally full red. An AFFF foam extinguisher, one with a blue band, can also be effective, whereas a dry chem white band or a CO2 black band may result in heat still being present and allowed for ignition. Conversely, using water on a Class B or F fire can be very dangerous and cause a flare-up, an explosive escalation of the fire as water can turn to steam, causing rapid expansion and spread the fire. Now we're going to talk about heat transfer. Fire regularly spreads through heat transfer rather than fire actively impinging on the material. Understanding how heat transfers helps us understand where fire may spread and how to deal with it. Heat is transferred by three primary means: radiation, which is a transfer of heat through space. This may cause a fire to spread by causing nearby materials to ignite. The fire may lack a continuity of fuel thanks to a containment line, but the radiant heat may cause it to spread across the containment line by heat transfer rather than burning material. Convection is a transfer of heat through hot air currents. We all know that hot air rises. This is convection and will most likely cause a spread of fire by causing it to access elevated fuels and the canopy fuel loads, and generally results in more in the escalation of fire behaviour. In a structure fire, convection also becomes a primary cause of spread. Conduction is a transfer of heat through solids. The more conductive a solid is, the more heat can be transferred. Conduction will see the spread of fire in or to vehicles or structures, thanks to, for instance, a shipping container or steel shed with flammable material on the inside. If fire impinges on the outside of the structure, the conduction will likely cause fire to ignite on the inside of that building. Bushfires can be defined by three different types: ground fire, surface fire, and crown fire. And we'll go through each of these in more detail as we progress. Generally speaking, we will be dealing with either a surface fire, that is fire accessing the leaf litter, grass, and undergrowth such as shrubs. If fire behaviour increases and adequate surface and elevated fuel loads exist, a fire can escalate to a crown fire, which is fire that's escalating the canopy of the forest. Spot fires. Spot fires are small fires that are ignited ahead of the main fire front and are caused by embers or a firebrand driven up with convection and pushed forward of the fire before falling to the ground and igniting new fires. They are impacted by a number of factors, from atmospheric pressure, fuel moisture content, types of fuel, especially bark types, breaks in the forest canopy, relative humidity. We have a number of fire behaviour calculators for different types of fuels that can help predict spotting distances. But in some cases, spot fires can form kilometres ahead of the main fire front under the right conditions. Parts of a bushfire. In this slide, you'll see the different parts of a bushfire. The arrow shows the direction of fire spread, primarily driven by wind, but also affected by terrain. At the rear of the fire, you will see the point of origin. We're assuming this is a new ignition with one single direction of travel. The rear of the fire is called the heel and is generally the safest part of the fire to attack. But wind changes, erratic winds and pyro systems may still make the heel unsafe. The sides of the fire are called the flanks, and as you move forward, you can see this fire has taken little runs and formed fingers. There is also an unburnt pocket or island in the diagram, along with a number of spot fires. These fires will tend to join up in what's known as convergence and significantly increase fire behaviour. So elements that influence the bushfire behaviour. There are three main elements that affect the bushfire. We have touched on them already, but they are fuel, weather, and topography. So fuel. This can be the fuel type. It can be grass, crops, dry sclerophyll forest, heath, mallee, etc. But there's also whether it's a surface fuel like grass or the leaf litter on the forest floor, a ground fire such as peat fires or elevated or crown fires that travel in the canopy of the trees in a forest. Crown fires are fast and destructive and all-consuming. Spotting during crown fires is often as much as 2.5 k's in front of the main fire front. Weather. Fires are mostly wind-driven. If there is little wind, the rate of spread will normally be limited. But don't be fooled by surface winds. If the weather conditions are right, a fire can access winds at higher levels. Heat and humidity also play a large part, especially when the temperature crosses over with humidity, i.e., temp is higher than the humidity means that fire dangers are escalating. Storms can bring strong and or erratic winds and lightning, with dry storms being the primary ignition source for many fires in many areas. Conversely, predicted weather changes can allow you to strengthen containments on a flank prior to a wind direction change, preventing the flank from becoming a large fire front. Topography also plays a large part in fire behaviour. Fire travels faster uphill and slower downhill. Terrain affects wind on the ground and can change spotting distances and behaviour. The combination of fuels present, the weather and existing environmental conditions caused by weather, such as extended dry spells, and the topography create the overall conditions by which we can understand and predict how we expect a fire will behave. We can input a number of these conditions into a fire behaviour calculator, which will help us to put numbers to our predictions. We'll go through this further shortly. Fire indicators. Fire indicators refer to signs that indicate the fire behaviour. This can be indicators you can see from some distance away, such as large plumes of very dark smoke. Dark smoke is an indicator of unburnt or incompletely burnt fuel and is often an indicator of significant fire activity. If you are first responding and see a large column of black smoke, it could be a trigger to immediately ask for additional resources to be activated. Flame height and depth, rate of spread, are indicators that form part of the many factors that dictate how we fight the fire. Low flame height with low rates of spread may allow for a direct attack. As these indicators escalate, it changes how we can safely and effectively fight the fire. When we start to see very extreme fire behaviours, it may result in transitioning from active fire suppression to purely defensive strategies. So we have already touched on the fuel types, and in this slide we'll describe the four main types of fuels that we tend to see in the New South Wales RFS. So the first one we'll talk about is sclerophyll. It's a predominant forest type that we deal with. Fire in this type of forest normally burns on the forest floor, accessing fine fuels derived primarily from leaf litter. This surface fuel is what sustains the fire, and as conditions escalate, the fire may access elevated fuels that include the shrubby undergrowth and then spreading into the canopy. In the northwest, we don't have a great deal of sclerophyll forest. Scrub is relatively common in the northwest. Fires in scrub tend to be very wind-driven and travel very quickly. The scrub we encounter in the northwest often has very patchy groundfall continuity, making it quite hard to deal with, as it takes big runs with gusts of wind and dies back when the wind decreases, with little opportunity to use backburns as they don't tend to take. Generally speaking, wide containments are the most effective options. Pine plantations are rare in the northwest, though there is a lot of native pine. Fire behaviour varies as pines grow, but for us, most of our pine is in the Pilliga, and like scrub, is very wind-driven. Grass is a primary fuel type that we deal with here in the northwest. Generally speaking, we would consider stubble and cured crops in this category as well. This type of fire can travel up to 3 times faster than forest fire and can be very unpredictable. Grass fires, however, can also be controlled well by accessing the fire from the burnt side, and with most farmers having quick access to heavy plants such as graders and offset ploughs, close containment with heavy plant proves to be very effective in controlling these fires. The AFDRS, which stands for Australian Fire Danger Rating System, is an Australian-wide system that we use to model fire behaviour. The system dictates the fire danger rating of a fire weather area from no rating through to catastrophic, based on the weather predictions from the Bureau of Meteorology. Fire behaviour models are mathematical models that have been developed through decades of research into how fire behaves. A lot of work has gone into researching how fire behaves in different fuel types in the Australian landscape. While these models don't give us a perfect number, they are very good indicators on how a fire will behave under the current weather conditions and fuel type, that it's burning in. And it in turn helps us allow and understand what strategies may be appropriate and effective, and then planning accordingly. You can access fire behaviour models on the New South Wales RFS Pocketbook app. And again, this is available on the video link, but also via our jotform through the Northwest. In this session, let's change slide here. In this session, we'll look further into firefighting priorities. We'll explore firefighting strategies, what control lines are, what mopping up and patrol entails, and why it's so important. And we'll touch on working safely around aircraft and heavy plant. So firefighting priorities. Probably going to sound a bit like a broken record because I think we're up to number 3 or third time mentioning firefighting priorities, but we'll go through it again. So our overriding priority is always firefighter safety. This means you and your fellow firefighters, you should be aware of your situation, keep you and your fellow firefighters safe, and look out for each other. Our first priority is to protect life. Protection of life is not just firefighting, or firefighters I should say, is often about informing people that they may be in danger and advising them on how they may act now and that they may be in danger. Second priority is to protect property. Property can mean anything that is of a personal, environmental, cultural, or economical value. For many people, their house and car are their primary assets. Houses are filled with memories, and for many people, a house is considered a priority. However, for a farmer, a house may be far less important than other assets on their property. A crop ready to harvest may be worth far more than the house. A shed full of tractors, headers, and other machinery is what allows them to continue to farm, and the loss of those assets could be crippling, whereas a house is somewhere to sleep. It's not to say that the house doesn't hold importance, but just less importance. And it's best to ascertain from the property owner what their priorities are when it comes to assets if you don't have the resources on site to protect all of them. The third priority is to protect the environment. This means minimising damage to ecosystems, endangered species, and natural habitats. There can be long-term impacts from firefighting activities such as soil erosion or water contamination. We also need to consider cultural and heritage values such as national parks and reserves that often hold sites of cultural significance in addition to environmental considerations. Our last priority is restoring normality. This can include restoring utilities and access so the public can return to their homes and their livelihoods. Bushfire suppression techniques. There is 3 primary strategies when it comes to suppressing bushfires. There are the tactics that then fall within the broad strategies. Offensive strategies. An offensive strategy is used when fire can be safely and effectively attacked or extinguished. It can be broken down into 3 tactics. Direct attack. This could be a direct attack on the head of the fire if the fire behaviour is such that it can be attacked safely. At a grass fire, this would often be from the burnt side of the fire. At a forest fire, it is likely to be from the side of the head, on the unburnt side. A direct attack can also be on the flank of the fire, like attacking the head. At a grass fire, this will likely be from the burnt side, and from a forest fire, this will be on the unburnt side. Staying at the rear of the flank and moving forwards towards the head, this works best with crews on both sides progressing towards the head in order to pinch the fire out. Attacking from the flank is often used when the fire intensity at the head is too intense for a direct attack, but the fire behaviours at the flank are still low enough to allow for that direct attack. Parallel attack. The parallel attack is normally used in low to medium intensity bushfires with flame heights in the range of 1.5 to 3 metres and involves construction of a control line parallel to the fire's edge and a short distance from it. Depending on the fire intensity, terrain, environment, fuel types, weather and topography, the tools may change. It's quite possible to use hand tools such as rake hoes and McLeod tools, blowers, and may also use heavy plants such as bulldozers or ploughs. You'll often hear the term close containment used to describe a parallel attack. Indirect attacks are used for intense, inaccessible bushfires and require the use of other natural fire barriers such as a river, road, trail or fence line, or the construction of a control line some distance from the fire's existing perimeter. This road, river or other natural barrier is called a control line in the context of firefighting. When a suitable control line is constructed or identified, the fuel between the control line and the fire can be controlled by backburning. Backburning is a process of lighting a controlled fire between a control line and the fire's edge in order to remove fuel and thus control and hopefully contain the main fire front. Defensive strategies are used when there is no effective or safe way to offensively attack a fire. Defensive strategies can be broken down into three main tactics. Line defence is a process of waiting for a fire to impact on a property and provide defensive firefighting at the property in order to protect the property. The main intent is to suppress the fire intensity at the property to defend the property rather than attempt to extinguish the fire. Ember defence. Ember attacks are a leading cause of structures catching alight during a bushfire. During an ember attack, firefighters will be providing protection by putting out small spot fires, wetting down exposures, particularly flammable parts of structures, and may also use foam to provide a longer lasting barrier. Backstop defence. Backstop is a last defence and is a last resort primarily aimed at preserving life. In this slide, we can see a significant crowning bushfire impacting dwellings, and with limited to no asset protection zone. The fire truck is situated at a school zone on the other side of the road, and firefighters are providing a rescue or safe area where the crews are able to provide a protected refuge for displaced people. Schools and other public places often get identified and approved as a neighbourhood safer place, or an NSP, for this purpose and provide a valuable, pre-identified and approved safe location where backstop defence can be conducted. So safeguarding strategy. This is used when defensive operations are not safe, and during a safeguarding strategy, all we can do essentially is warn, move and protect. Control lines. A control line is a fuel-free path that is used to uses defined location to undertake a number of fire suppression activities. Types of control lines may be man-made, natural highways such as rivers, wet lines, normally using foam, or maybe mineral earth. These are normally constructed using hand tools or heavy plant, where possible, a naturally occurring or pre-existing control line is preferred in order to minimise any further environmental impacts. So rake hose and McLeod tools are a common way that we construct control lines by hand. A McLeod tool is a specifically designed tool used for firefighting that incorporates a wide hoe on one side of the tool and a broad metal rake on the other, hence the name or nickname rake hoe. McLeod tools are normally used in a team, and depending on the number of members of the team, the type of terrain and fuel will depend on how or what method you use. The first method is called a step-up method and is normally used with a smaller team. Each member will complete a section of the control line to the desired standard before leapfrogging to the front and completing a new section. This will continue until the control line has been completed. The other option is a one-link method that tends to be used with a larger team. It involves each person making a light pass of the area while continually progressing. The first person on the crew will take a small amount of leaf litter out, the second a little bit more, the third may chip out at roots, etc., and so forth until the last person in the line can tidy up and ensure that the trail is at mineral earth and at the desired standard. Mopping up and patrol. Mopping up, often referred to as blacking out, is a process of making sure a contained fire is fully extinguished so as to ensure it cannot restart or reignite. Mopping up is done manually with hand tools such as axes and chainsaws, and using water with or without wetting agents such as BFFF foam. Mopping up is undertaken in burnt ground, and in that environment, trees are weakened or still burning, creating a high risk of falling trees or branches. Mopping up operations can be undertaken as part of the primary or initial fire suppression activities, or as part of patrolling the fire after the initial suppression activities have been completed. Patrols can be on an ongoing rolling basis by multiple crews, or can be done once or twice a day, particularly in the case of small localised fires, and should continue until the fire can be deemed as completely extinguished and safe to leave. The depth of mopping up will depend on the nature of the fire, the weather conditions, and if rain has been experienced over the fireground, as well as the nature of the fuels. For example, grass will require minimal mopping up, whereas heavily timbered country with lots of logs on the ground and standing trees or trees with hollows are likely to need significantly more mopping up operations and at a greater depth. Terrain also plays a part, as steep terrain can result in smouldering material to roll down into unburnt country from significant distances and may require patrols and mopping up operations to be further extended. Backburning is a regularly misused and understood term. Every time you look at social media when people are talking about big fires or bushfire hazard management, you'll see people throwing around the term backburning. The RFS or national parks didn't do enough backburning during the winter, or they need to do more backburns, or they lost control of backburns. What these commentators are usually referring to is prescribed burns, which are controlled burns that are undertaken to control fuel loads to a set prescription. Backburns are intentionally lit fires used during firefighting operations to remove fuel from an uncontrolled fire. In other words, you are burning back into the uncontrolled fire in an effort to either achieve containment or provide protection to a particular asset. Backburns are broken up into strategic backburns, which is defined as a backburn operation implemented with the intention of halting the main fire, and tactical backburns, which are generally smaller burns used to protect specific assets and may be used to remove some fuel from around a structure as a main fire front is about to hit, and may allow firefighters to control a lower intensity fire as they light it, as opposed to the main fire front that is headed their way to the asset. Further information on backburning can be found in the fireground SOPs that are on 1 RFS. Again, you can access 1 RFS or some of these documents by accessing the jotform if you're in the Northwest District, or we can either print or email directly from the office if you'd like to give us a call. Fireground safety. Fireground safety. While we have spoken in depth about safety in previous sections, it's worth referring back to safety in the context of safety on the fireground. In this section, the key takeaways are: when working around a fire on the fireground, it is important to always work safely. This means being aware of what's happening around you, so situational awareness, choosing the safest way to do each job, in other words, safe techniques, knowing what to do if your life is in danger, survival skills. We will often work around heavy plant, and it's really worth considering RFS appliances in this category as well. When approaching heavy plant, you should establish positive communications. That means you need to get a response from your communication from the operator. This may be done by UHF radio, eye contact, a thumbs up, or an active reply to your contact. Once you have positive communication, you should wait until the machine has stopped and any or all implements have been lowered prior to approaching. This will often be combined with the revs being dropped to an idle and the operator opening the door to the cab. When you are confident that it is safe to approach, where possible, this should be from a location that is most visible to the operator. In an excavator, for example, that might be on the side of the machine the cab is situated. We often also work around aircraft in the RFS. In most cases, your firefighting role on the fireground will not be dealing with aircraft that are on the ground. But if you do, you should always be aware of propellers and rotors and always follow any instruction given by the pilot or flight crew. We do, however, use aircraft a lot for firefighting operations. Usually that means water bombing activities. If you're on a fireground that has aircraft undertaking water bombing operations, you should watch out for branches that may break and hit you. You should place hand tools well clear of you, and your helmet likewise in the case of water bombing operations likely to impact you directly. Some aircraft also drop gels and retardants, and these can include dyes. It is, however, important to remember that everything the RFS uses is safe for human contact. Session 7, we're going to talk about hazard reduction in this session. We'll look into the principles of hazard reduction and participation in a prescribed burn. Hazard reduction is intended to minimise the impact of bushfires by conducting activities to reduce the vegetation. This can be done a number of ways that may include a combination of hazard reduction activities. There are 3 main methods that are commonly used to reduce vegetation. The first is mechanical activities. This is the use of hand tools, power tools and machines to mechanically cut and or remove or reduce vegetation. This may be brush cutters, mowers and slashers. Another method that is getting more commonly used is livestock, which are used to eat out and trample down vegetation. Cattle are commonly used in grassed areas, while goats are often used in areas of vegetation types that other livestock don't normally consume, and are often used in sensitive areas such as creek lines where burning or mechanical activities are not allowed under the environmental codes. The method that you are most probably aware of and likely to participate in within the RFS is prescribed burning. Prescribed burning is the use of fire in the landscape to reduce vegetation or fuel loads and is conducted under a set of prescriptions defined in a formal written burn plan. So why do we conduct hazard reduction activities? Fire behaviour is driven by a number of factors, but without fuel, there is no fire. Less fuel equals less fire activity, should an ignition occur. By conducting hazard reduction activities in defined strategic locations, it helps us to protect things at risk, assets and other things of value. Participating in a prescribed burn can be a great way to gain skills and practice firefighting activities. While prescribed burns are conducted in mild conditions aimed at ensuring low intensity fire activity, it's always possible for them to escape, especially if unpredicted escalation of weather conditions occur. In addition to all normal firefighting hazards, prescribed burns also involve the following risks. The mild conditions may lead to people becoming complacent about safety. Fire behaviour may be more variable than usual due to patchy, moist and dry areas in mild conditions that may lead to unexpected lulls and bursts of fire behaviour. As firefighters have full control over where, when and how the fire is lit, they also may have a greater responsibility and liability for what the fire does. The attention of officers may be split between supervising the burn and mentoring inexperienced firefighters. This may limit their alertness for hazards. Planning for a prescribed burn takes place in several stages. A local bushfire risk management plan looks at all the bushfire risks in the area, works out a systematic way of dealing with them, gives priority to the most serious risks. Individual prescribed burn plans are then planned in detail, considering burn prescription, public safety, firefighter safety, smoke management, traffic control, asset protection, control of any escape of fire, resources needed for the burn that are worked out, including number and type of firefighters, tankers, equipment and supplies, preparing for the burn, date for the prescribed burn set well in advance. OIC should study the plan, check site conditions and prepare resources. Obtain required certificates, permits and notifications. Firefighters may be asked to participate only if they are competent to use equipment, follow procedures, understand bushfire behaviour and safety, have full bush firefighting PPE and PPC issued. You should not take part if you're ill, injured, not competent or missing PPE, so thinking of I'm safer and laces. You should discuss concerns with your trainer or captain if you're unsure. Site preparations may include constructing control lines, setting up markers, removing fuel around assets and habitats, notifying neighbours. Prep activities can double as training opportunities. Before the burn, a comprehensive SMEAC briefing should be provided. So SMEAC stands for Situation. That may be the terrain, vegetation, access and weather. Mission. That would be the purpose and objectives of the burn. Execution. Control lines, lighting patterns, contingency plans and so forth. A is for administration. So logistics. Where's the fuel, the water, food, first aid and communications. C is for command and comms, and that is the chain of command and the comms network. S is for safety, hazards, procedures, escapes and refuges, PPE and C, and who the safety officer is and how you can contact them. Maps and sketches are often supplied, particularly if the area is large and complex. You should ask questions during a briefing if it's unclear. Familiarise yourself with the areas such as refuges and emergency facilities. Check that your PPE and C is donned and checked. Radios are tested and working. Equipment and supplies are distributed and checked. The area should be checked for public access and traffic control arranged and in place if needed. Crews should be reminded of contingency and emergency procedures. During the burn, usual bushfire fire safety rules apply. Never work alone. Use a LACES checklist. Inexperienced members should work with a mentor or buddy. Lighting patterns. In a prescribed burn, it's usually lit in spots or strips to keep intensity low. You generally tend to avoid continuous lines of ignition unless it's necessary. The aim is a low intensity fire to remove ground litter and preserve the upper vegetation. You should burn the perimeter first, then the interior. Ignition may be made using aircraft incendiaries or special incendiary guns or ground lighting. Anchor points should be used to start a burn. A burned section becomes a refuge for the next stage. You should always have a refuge nearby and an escape route ready. After the burn, usual bushfire fighting safety rules apply, so never work alone and use LACES. At the end of a burn, all firefighters should participate as it's a learning opportunity. Equipment maintenance would be clean, sharpen, service and restow tools, refill the water, foam and fuel containers, replace the vehicle supplies, check, clean, repair and replace PPE and C. Session 8, Providing Emergency Care. In this session, we will look at the kinds of assistance we may be called on to provide, hygiene precautions while providing care, caring for casualties, and restowing first aid equipment. Due to the nature of the work we do, as a member of the New South Wales RFS, you and or your crew may be the first to arrive on the scene of an incident or accident. In some cases, you may be called on to provide care to people who have already been injured or affected by the incident you have responded to. In other cases, they may be injured during the ongoing operations. A common situation you might find yourself in is dealing with a fellow firefighter who's been injured or may be suffering from heat stroke. While you may not be first aid qualified, you may be the most experienced or capable person on the scene, and your decisions and actions can make a difference in the recovery of casualties on the scene. The information contained in this session is intended to provide sufficient knowledge to provide basic emergency care, but I would encourage you to consider undertaking and maintaining a first aid qualification, if you don't already have one, which the RFS provide at no cost to current members. In many cases, you may be required to work with other agencies in undertaking first aid assistance. More often than not, this will be an ambulance, either during initial operations or later on their arrival. It's not uncommon to be dispatched to assist ambulance for a variety of reasons, from providing assistance lifting patients or driving an ambulance, or on the rare occasions, the RFS may be asked to provide initial CPR and defibrillation support, especially in remote areas where ambulance travel times can be increased. Once the ambulance is on scene, it's important to remember that they are the experts in providing casualty support, and so you should always follow their directions. For crew leaders and incident controllers, the first step is to undertake a scene assessment. While it would be nice to assume you will have a crew leader, qualified member on scene to do so, Particularly in more western areas, such as here at Northwest, you may end up being the first person on scene, either in the truck or in a private vehicle or farm fire unit. Steps to consider when undertaking an initial assessment include identifying potential hazards, identifying the type of incidents, determining the number of casualties and the extent of their injuries, taking appropriate precautions, protecting both responders and casualties, and determining and requesting the appropriate assistance. If you're unsure, you should always ask for more than you think you need, as it's easy to turn resources around if they're not needed. Next, you'll need to assess the level of care required. Let's think about the hypothetical scenario. You are on the scene of a fire and you are working with an older member of your brigade, let's call him Bill, who has turned up in his private ute with a slip-on quick spray unit installed. Bill has been working all day on the farm and it's a 40-degree day. It's around 3 p.m. and a header has caused a fire in chickpeas being harvested. Bill is working around the rear of the header and is trying to keep the header that is on fire from spreading to the unharvested crop. There is an offset working along the fire's edge of the stubble that is still burning, and a couple of other farm fire units and another fire truck working with the offset to black out. You are on another hose helping Bill, and you're managing to keep the fire out of the crop and waiting for the bulk water from the town brigade to arrive. Bill moves to the left and it looks like he trips. You continue to keep your hose on the fire and move over to Bill and see he is barely conscious and not responding properly to you. You are both in unburnt crop with the header continuing to burn. In light of this scenario, what should you do? What do you need to consider? First, we'll need to think of the dangers to you and Bill. If you begin first aid, you can't keep water on the fire. If you can't keep water on the fire, it's going to get into the crop. And you are in unburnt crop, so you'll be impacted by fire. You need to provide first aid care to Bill, but it's not safe where you are, so the first action you need to take is to drag Bill into the burnt area on the other side of the header so you can provide first aid to him in a safe place. If Bill is breathing and semi-conscious, it might pay to put Bill in the recovery position and radio the other truck for support. You can always use the help and the fire is still a problem. You'll definitely want to call Firecom and get ambulance on the way as well. Next, you'll want to consider what may have caused Bill to end up on the ground. Has he tripped and hit his head? Maybe it's a heart condition or other health condition that Bill has suffered. But it's also 3 p.m. on a very hot day and Bill's been working. Is he dehydrated and overheated and suffering from heat stress? If you can find out any of this information, you can respond more appropriately and also provide this information to paramedics so they can provide the most appropriate care as soon as possible and as early as possible. You should be staying aware of all the normal hazards that you may experience at an incident, as we discussed in the safety session. In the context of a header fire, you are likely to be subject to diesel and oil toxic fumes, explosions from pressure vessels that may be present on the header, and possibly shade trees or power lines that may be present in the paddock. Hygiene precautions. What are they and why are they important? People who we treat may be infected by communicable diseases, and so it's important for you as a person providing that care to use appropriate precautions to limit the chance of becoming infected. In addition to the potential for being the first aider provider potentially being infected by communicable diseases, the patient may also have open wounds that can become infected, causing those wounds to take longer to heal and cause further damage. In some cases, infections can cause the amputation of limbs or even death. So infection control is very important. When you are providing care to patients, you should wear gloves, masks, and goggles where possible, and appropriate to provide a layer of protection for both you and the patient. Care should be also taken to ensure sterile equipment and dressings are kept sterile and clean, or use new equipment or dressings if needed. Caring for casualties. As we've been through already, you should consider your safety first. If it is not safe to provide care to the casualty, then you'll need to take actions to make it safe prior to beginning first aid. This is the first step of Doctors ABCD, which is a universal emergency care plan that should be used. Doctors ABCD stands for danger, Ensuring the surroundings are safe for you and the patient. Response, checking to see if the person responds. Send help, call 000, call Firecom, send people away to do this for you. A is for airway. Check the patient has a clear airway and is breathing. CPR. If the patient is not breathing, commence CPR, 30 compressions to do 2 breaths, repeating until help arrives, the person is breathing, or you are physically unable to continue. D is for defibrillator. If available, use a defib and commence CPR following the defib instructions. Restowing first aid equipment. When you are required to provide immediate emergency care to patients at an incident, it's important that you ensure that after you use them, you restock or restow any equipment and consumables used, so everything is ready to be used again at a moment's notice. This can be broken down in 4 steps. Check what has been used and what you need to do to get the first aid kit and other equipment such as defib or oxyviva ready to go again. Cleaning. Most equipment uses consumable parts, so there tends not to be a great deal of cleaning, but cleaning out debris and used consumables is important. Restowing will be the largest priority. As mentioned, most first aid gear is single use and will need to be replaced. Disposal. Again, most first aid kits use single use gear. If you're not sure, dispose of it, as the integrity and sterility is very important. Session 9. Potentially traumatic events. Responding to and providing support at incidents and accidents can potentially expose you to traumatic events or events in situations that are traumatic to you. In this session, we'll explore what a traumatic event is, common stress responses, some precautions and protective strategies, and coping strategies. We'll also look into the RFS Mental Health Services Framework, the mental health continuum, and where you can seek help. The RFS offers a range of mental health support options to its members in order to provide members choice of what kind of assistance they want. There is 4 main support service options available. Peer support is available for members to debrief and connect in a confidential manner with another RFS firefighter who has undergone specific training to arm them with the skill set to provide wellbeing assistance. After certain incidents, your crew leader or district staff may reach out to peer support program for you or the crew and ask them to reach out for a chat and see if you're okay or need some supports. The RFS also have a number of chaplains, and these chaplains are available for members and their immediate family. Chaplains are trained to provide a range of supports and from emotional through to spiritual and pastoral support, regardless of your religious beliefs or denomination, and you do not need to have religious belief in order to benefit from speaking with a chaplain. We also have a number of psychologists on staff. These are qualified health professionals and can provide assessment and treatment for a number of mental health issues. There is also a member assistance program that gives access to members and their families to a range of clinicians such as psychologists, social workers and counsellors, and can provide short-term supports where needed. If you need to access any of these supports, you can access peer support and chaplaincy by calling 1-800-049-933 24/7. The RFS psychologist can be contacted by emailing mental.wellbeing@rfs.nsw.gov.au, or you can call the Member Assistance Program on 1300 360 364. This is also a 24/7 program. Members can be exposed to traumatic events in a number of ways. First is directly. Sometimes firefighters will be in dangerous situations where they may feel a threat to their own safety. Indirectly, firefighters may attend an event or accident scene where members of the public are injured or in danger. Even if you don't know the individual who is injured or in danger, it can be distressing. Many people also find the sight of injured animals upsetting. Vicariously, in the RFS, members may hear about an injury that happened to a fellow firefighter, or hear the story about an incident that other crews attended. Hearing about, reading or viewing footage of these events can also be potentially traumatic. They are usually experiences which pose a significant threat to a person's life, physical safety, or psychological well-being. Common stress responses. Many people have emotional or physical reactions following experience of a potentially traumatic event. For most, these reactions subside over a few days or weeks. Common responses include physical, emotional, cognitive, or behavioural. Precautions and protective strategies. Member health, safety and welfare is one of the highest priorities of the RFS. During operations, exercises or activities, the workplace for members is often dynamic and evolving. Precautions and protective strategies include utilising the I'm Safer checklist, minimising exposure, mental rituals, or boosting your confidence and competence. Coping strategies are techniques people use to manage stress, adapt to challenges, and maintain emotional well-being during difficult situations. Some methods include connections with others, relaxation and mindfulness, positive actions, cognitive strategies, and physical health. The RFS Mental Health Framework outlines 3 distinct service types, each tailored to different levels of needs. Type 1 is prevention and early intervention. Type 2 is clinical response and recovery. Type 3 is incident management for potentially traumatic events or PTEs. The mental health continuum can be used as a reflection and tracking tool to notice changes in the different aspects of well-being over time. The continuum encourages observation of frequency, intensity, and pervasiveness of impact over time, considering the past month. Where to seek help. We've already been through the support options and how to access, but mental health is incredibly important and is a high priority for the RFS. So here it is again. RFS members can access mental health services through the following structured pathways. 24/7 through the SIS phone line 1-800-049-933. Self-referrals and leadership referrals. Chaplaincy and family support. RFS psychologists. The Member Assistance Program also. So what now? Once you've completed this video, you're ready for your Firefighter 1 practical session. This will be a single day comprising of an open book theory assessment followed by practical training and assessment. On successful completion, you'll receive the New South Wales RFS Firefighter 1 qualification, or FF1, that comes along with 3 national units of competency. I would encourage you to complete the Firefighter 2 course at the same time, as it will only take a little bit longer to complete while undertaking the FF1. Firefighter 2 video is also on this channel, and you can click onto that next. It's much shorter than this video, thankfully. Firefighter 2 is a prerequisite for a number of further courses that you may want to complete in the future, and so again, it's much easier to just complete Firefighter 1 and Firefighter 2 at the same time. If you're in a brigade that's classified as village 1 or 2, you'll need to complete Firefighter 1 and 2 in order to get on the truck anyway. So for those of you who are in that classification of brigade, you're not going to have much choice other than to watch me for a little bit longer anyway. On that note, thank you for your time and attention, and if you have any questions or need any supports, please feel free to give the district office a call. Here in the Northwest, that is 6822 7700, or you can email northwestteam@rfs.nsw.gov.au. That number again is 6822 7700. Thank you.